Good morning. Welcome to the Treasure Coast Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Stuart, Florida. Today is December 24th, 2023, which I think everybody knows. I'm your worship associate this morning. We're a welcoming congregation. We welcome people of all gender identities, ethnicities, ages, and backgrounds. We're happy to see you this Christmas Eve morning when you might be doing something else. We are also on YouTube. To find out more information about us, go to our website at tcuuc.org. You may request our weekly email newsletter there. Welcome to those joining us remotely. If you haven't yet, please silence your cell phones. Visitors, if you're comfortable, please step up to our microphone here and introduce yourself.
I'm Linnea, third generation UU from Detroit, but I am a member of the Ann Arbor, Michigan congregation, and I used to attend here in the before times.
Welcome. Our big announcement today is that this evening, on Christmas Eve evening at 5:30, there will be Christmas Eve carols, candles, and cookies. Other announcements can be found in your order of service that you probably have. I want to thank everybody who helped with the service. Our music today is from F. Bruce Ruby, who recorded this from Rhode Island. Our thanks to the greeters and ushers and to our host, Corina Poloni, and with the tech support, Rachel Valentino and Joanne Leone I saw today. Thanks for the cookies and coffee. Reverend Bob MacDonald is in the pulpit today. It's now time for the prelude.
Feel free to hum. want to tell you that a ton of work has gone into putting these together, as we hoped they would be, and we hope they will be. But Karina has informed me that there are still glitches, and that sounded okay because we do glitches here. We're comfortable. You could say we're at home with glitches. But anyhow, we'll hope for the best, and we're indebted to Bruce and to the soloist who will hopefully be singing to us later. Thank you.
And to Karina.
And to Karina.
Nice to hear Bruce again. Now it's time to light the chalice. May the candles and the holiday lights at this dark time of year inspire us to see the light in others and in ourselves. The opening words are in honor of the winter solstice just a couple of days ago on the 21st. It's called The Shortest Day by Susan Cooper. So the shortest day came and the year died, and everywhere down the centuries of the snow-white world came people singing, dancing to drive the dark away. They lighted candles in winter trees. They hung their homes with evergreen. They burned beseeching fires all night long to keep the year alive. And when the New Year's sunshine blazed awake, they shouted, reveling. Through the frosty ages you can hear them echoing behind us. Listen. All the long echoes sing the same delight, the shortest day. As promise wakens in the sleeping land, they carol, feast, give thanks, and dearly love their friends and hope for peace. And so do we, here, now, this year, and every year. Welcome, Yule. Now, our first hymn will be 253, O Come All Ye Faithful. Stand if you like. Are we just singing?
Do you all have hymnals?
Yeah,
We know this,
yeah,
don't we? And we
okay.
have choir members here, some very practiced choir members. So let's turn to 253 and hear the music in us as we sing. We'll skip the Latin. All right, somebody start us. All right, we'll end with that, and we'll carry on with the next one in the same way, seated. But please be seated.
Let us recite our affirmation, speaking the first verse and singing the second. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung from every land by every tongue. Excuse me?
I was suggesting our choir might come up here.
Well, that sounds like a good idea. The next one is number 231, Angels We Have Heard on High, and you may remain seated unless... All right, we're going to get some help. Thank you, Linda.
We have a couple of clergy here, and we have a number of choir members. We aren't helpless now. Come on. This is the choir of the willing.
Very high.
Sweetly singing o'er
I'd rather listen to them, actually.
and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Long, was great.
You know, there wasn't much practice that went into that either. You'd be surprised to hear that, I'm sure. This is our time of joys and sorrows, I think, isn't it? Yes. In which we invite you to share yours in the hope that you will know you've been heard and are supported. We ask that they be personal and brief. Let me start out by telling you that I got the message from that woman that our Pam, our dear Pam, was in the hospital, was taken to the hospital with breathing difficulty 2 nights ago. Or was it Friday night? I think. Anyway, I couldn't reach her until Saturday morning, at which time she told me she was ready to come home. So I got her, and she stopped at a store and bought some cookies for us, and is home, and she says she's feeling fine. They were afraid it was the RSV thing, but I think they determined that she doesn't have that, and she's fine. So Pam is always in our thoughts and in our hearts. Pam Corbin. Pat.
Yeah, I was going to just say, I talked with her about an hour ago, and she told me it was RSV. And I was shocked. I called the hospital first to see if she was allowed visitors, and that's when I found out you had already kidnapped her.
Yeah, she needed to be sprung.
So anyway, she knows she's got a lifeline and to let us know if she needs anything.
Yeah.
She was feeling much better.
Yeah. Anyone else? Come right to the mic and share yours.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Haken. I think Bob will like this one. I'm very happy because we adopted a new cat.
Amen.
And she was my granddaughter's cat. My granddaughter was unable to keep her, and we were kind of hesitant about introducing her to our existing cat and dog. But things seem to be going very well, and we love her already, and she's a beautiful cat. So her name is Zamara, and we're very happy to have her.
Good. Judith, go ahead.
Good morning, I'm Judith, and this is a very special Merry Christmas to Debbie Harris, Francisco, and all the 4 dogs, wherever they may be wandering around New England, Connecticut, Massachusetts, somewhere this Christmas. Merry Christmas, Deb.
I'm Tia. I was going to mention Deb as well. I talked to her last night. They're in Guilford, Connecticut. They think it's a really lovely community, and they've looked at several places. And if the realtor allows, they'll be looking in this morning. And are we? So they're attached to the realtor's schedule. Are we doing this tonight?
I believe we are.
Good. Yes. Yes. Okay, good. So if they can't watch this morning, they'll watch tonight. So hello, Deb and everybody.
Anyone else with an announcement not related to Deb Harris? Go ahead, Ronnie.
I have a bunch of things. I'm Ronnie. First of all, I have a joy. My son is here, but I couldn't get him to come because he didn't take his shower. He wouldn't come without his shower, and blah blah blah.
Enough said on that.
I wanted you guys to meet him finally. But anyhow, also I have 2 friends, Donna and her husband David, who I'd love you to keep in your thoughts and prayers. She has 4-stage cancer, and he fell by their pool, hit his head, and is in the hospital. Can't communicate with a brain bleed, and I don't know if either of them are going to survive, so it's very, very, very sad. And there was another, and Fred, his back is still bothering him. He still has this muscle tear, but so he doesn't sit or stand for a long time. But other than that, we're having a Merry Christmas.
Anyone else? Then we move one for those that we haven't said out loud but have in our hearts and minds, and most of us, all of us probably have someone like that, if not many. Okay, and now the pastoral meditation is this reading from the back by Kathleen McTigg. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment, until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence and memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together. Kathleen McTigg. And now moments of silence. Our next piece of music we know pretty well, 123, Spirit of Life. And we get ready to sing it by humming it. So will our choir just start us from your seats in the humming and then lead us in the singing? Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Now is the time when we have our morning offering. We lift each other's spirits here, wouldn't you say? I mean, I'm sure I reflect your feeling that also. And we want to do that week in and week out, lift each other's spirits. And in order to keep on doing that, you know the story. We need your generosity. And right now I need a couple of ushers. I've got Lou and I got Tia. Let there be an offering. While the offering is happening, we're going to hope to get this young woman piped to the wall. We're going to hope. Bruce told me that Geneva is a high school senior in his area, probably on her way to Juilliard or someplace like that. So I'm glad we got to hear her. I hope we get to hear her tonight, this evening also. Now, in my years of ministry, whenever it happened that Christmas Eve or Christmas Day fell on Sunday, the congregations always discussed, up north and here, maybe we should just cancel and, stay home, let people stay home. Maybe we should tell people to come in their pajamas. Fortunately, no one ever did that. But basically up there and here, we went ahead. And this morning, I would call a pleasant surprise, and Bill Falk would too. A pleasant surprise to see you all here. Now, if you have it in you, 5:30 this afternoon, we will be just as happy to see you. But anyhow, that be that. I also learned along my way that when Christmas falls on Sunday or Christmas Eve on Sunday, you don't want to do a long sermon. So you do a short sermon, and you do a lot of singing. So that was what we planned for today, a short sermon and singing. I really do thank Bruce for putting what he could in a package and sending it to Karina. I appreciate the great deal of time that Karina has taken extra this week, including on Tuesday being up a ladder right over here, getting that thing to work with a specialist that was brought in. So our deep felt thanks to Karina for making us work as well as we can here. And as we know, we are a work in progress. Whenever Christmas comes, it seems like it comes to a world in great need, It seems like the need around us, people on the street, people on the corners, we see people with their households in a cart on the side so they can beg on the corner. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of that. We know there are people living under the bridge behind some shopping areas, just a huge amount of need in our area and in our world. And we won't say much more about the world. We know what's happening there. I turned on the news this morning to hear the latest. I do want to be up to date with you. The latest was people really want to know where they can shop today. So I got a list. If you really want to know that, see me after. I don't think you do. I know I don't. Christmas is a mix of religion and family and economy and culture. It's a mix. So what to talk about? What I do want to talk about for stories today, I want to start with a couple and end with a couple this evening. I'll just begin with what I have shared before, and that is the story of Moss Hart. It appeals to me, Moss Hart, playwright, great American playwright, in his autobiography, Act One. He tells the story of being a kid in a family in the Depression time, or actually pre-Depression time. And it appeals to me because probably like some of you, I started in a family that really scraped together, and at Christmas time really scraped to have something for us. You couldn't go back to school after the holidays without being asked, what did you get? And you couldn't say socks and underwear. You just couldn't get away with that. And the parents seemed to know that. So something had to be come up with. And usually it was a chemistry set or a rector set or something like that. So I could relate to this story by Mozart. He's a kid in Manhattan with his family having to live with an aunt. Is it aunt or aunt? He was probably living with both. But anyhow, it was poverty galore, and it wasn't much of a time for Christmas, and he didn't expect much. He was a kid, and like a kid he wanted. So he tells the story that on Christmas Eve, his father said to him, "Let's go for a walk on one of those Aves, Lexington or Amsterdam." And so he, with a kid's heart, thinks, a gift is going to happen. A gift is going to happen. So he and his dad go for this walk, and they didn't talk much together, ever, and they didn't talk on this walk. But he has his thoughts, and he doesn't know what the father is thinking. So they look at some things, and they have to walk away. And they continue the walk, they look at some things, but they have to walk away. So he gets the idea, as he realized the walk is wrapping up, he would just like to hug his father and say, it's okay, he got it. He got the gift. The gift was this time with his father. And in his autobiography, he skips ahead to being able to tell his father on his deathbed, really his father's deathbed, that night meant more to him than any other that he can remember. Just walking with his father on Christmas Eve with the emotion of Christmas and the connection or disconnection, but definitely the connection by the time the walk ended. So that's my family story. And then I really thought for this morning, I ought to tell you all I know about the Christian story of the Nativity. And that's a short message. Why do I laugh? Because, in fact, it is. But, of course, I have to go on a little bit. We grew up in a non-religious household. But one thing we heard very often, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Now, those words weren't spoken in a religious context. We didn't go to any place religion early. I mean, that could have been a group on the Ed Sullivan Show, which we did watch too regularly from our kids' point of view. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. But later on, my brother and I, got into church and got into college and seminary and learned a little bit. But still, it was a very little bit about the beginning of Jesus of Nazareth. I read the Christian Christmas story year after year like poetry. Poetry is what the heart strives to express, even in the realm of the ineffable, the inexpressible, albeit mystery. It is often the language of love, imagination, and longing for a better world. As the philosopher Pascal said, the heart has reasons the head doesn't know about. So Christmas, a time, a child born amidst violence, the heavens singing of peace and goodwill in an area that has never known it. I call this poetry, metaphor, myth, about what the heart wants to know and what the heart wants to be true. Karen Armstrong, in her book, A Short History of Myth, claims that cultures, societies before us used myth as a way of surviving, of understanding our relationships to the universe and to each other. Myths were not about another world. They were attempts to understand our own enough to get by, to survive in it. Armstrong says the Western world in the last 2 centuries has reduced myth to falsehood and fairy tale. She thinks that's a loss. If you read myth literally, you don't get it. Now, I think I'm kind of a wordsmith, or at least someone who picks up on things that people say and sometimes wonders why. But I've noticed an awful lot of people say literally. Now, I wonder if they say that because it's kind of like I've talked before about truth be told. Truth be told. You have to say that to underline the truthfulness of what you're about to say. Literally. I don't quite get that. Another thing I've noticed, and this is totally beside the point, but you know I go there. Do you notice how many people say right in the middle of a conversation? Now, if I say right, I assume that's, am I right? With a question mark at the end. And if there's a question mark, I think that should invite your response. But I notice now more and more people say right, and then they go on with what they're saying. I don't quite get that. Somebody who does can explain that to me later, but not now. So the Christmas story. It starts with a pregnancy. Most of our stories start with a pregnancy. So a young woman conceives. I've always been guided by the way my Hebrew professor at the University of Chicago, where I started seminary, 1 year there, 2 in New Haven, how he explained this. He said that the story of Jesus' birth was written most likely by old Jews, probably about 30 years old in that time. But it was definitely written by old Jews after Jesus' death. The idea of the virgin birth, one parent participating, was one of the 5 fundamentals of Christian faith, and we know they were conceived in the early 20th century. So we know that the idea of the virgin birth came about, how the idea of the virgin birth came about, but not how the birth came about. The way that professor put it, those old Jews who wrote these stories didn't believe in gynecological wonders. They were writing for some other reason than explaining how the kid came to be to birth. They were writing in symbols about what he came to mean to them, to a few, and then to many. So it's poetry and metaphor. A young woman gets pregnant, maybe 14 or 15, and the most eloquent poetry is placed on her lips. He, the Almighty, has put down the mighty and exalted those of low degree. The idea is shalom, peace, justice, finally for all. Shepherds stand watch over the birthing event. I guess they are representing those of low degree. And the nativity scene is completed by wise men, maybe stargazers from the east, following a star that shines over Bethlehem. Maybe the poetry, the myth or meaning here is that there is something here for all to see and appreciate. The great theologian Marcus Borg wrote in one of our study books here on Wednesday, "What does it mean to say that a star pointed toward a village? It doesn't make sense. It's poetry. Somebody sees it pointing. That's the point." Now, here's a little bit more of that theological prelude to the star. Our Wednesday group, I believe, read the Bart Ehrman book, Did Jesus Exist? Nothing is known about Jesus' humble beginnings. Absolutely nothing. So all that Christmas pageant material from the 2 gospel birth stories, 2 very different stories That all came after his death and crucifixion. Nothing to do with how he was born, only to do with how followers valued him. Ehrman says there's even a group he calls mythicists. Mythicists. Has anybody ever heard of that? Mythicists believe Jesus is a total invention. Ehrman, who began as an evangelical Christian, but is now an agnostic and an ancient manuscripts expert at UNC, Chapel Hill, he puts his view very clearly. He believes Jesus existed, just not the Jesus most Christians seem to believe in. But then he gets to the wise men, the astrologers, whatever they were, and he says, like Marcus Board, a star can't point to a manger scene. Now, I say that because I had an inspiring experience about a decade ago in our condo on Hutchison Island. We lived in one of the Oceanas by Shuckers. So my three-legged alarm clock got up on the bed and stared me to awake. She was good at that. She stared at me until I woke up. And I glanced out the window, and behold, there was a beam of light coming to the shore. And it seemed to have a little spot at the end. So hurriedly, I put down some food for the alarm clock, and I go down there. And it was an odd thing. It was odd to me. It seemed to be the density of the water in the sand that met the ocean. It seemed like a little spot. I stood there watching it for a few minutes. I heard no voice. Now, if my wife had gotten up and gone out onto the deck to see what I was doing, I would have heard a voice, but I didn't, no voice. So what that said to me was, I should possibly be a bit skeptical of my skepticism. There was a beam of light, there was a little spot at the end, and I couldn't get it on my camera, but I tried. Poetry. What is there in this magical, mystical, mythical poetry yet that we still wish to be true? Humble origins, people of no particular earthly promise or power, go on to write in print large enough for these generations later to see. Peace and goodwill were the plan from the beginning. Every pregnancy begins, or should begin, with an angel whispering, a child of the Most High, or of the highest value we know, is about to be born. And the universe has a song of peace and goodwill, and we can hear it and hope for it and work for it all this time later. If the message is going to be heard, we are going to have to hear it and work for it. Which reminds me always of the lines from, I'm not sure if they're from Shaw or Aeschylus or Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy, this was quoted at his funeral in '68. His brother or governor, someone said, Kennedy often said, some people see things that are and ask why. I see things that never were and ask why not. Maybe one of the meanings of this holiday is that we can still ask that peace and goodwill are possible, but they're going to require work. And who's going to do that? We know who. Hopefully all of us, more of us. Now, I was thinking of announcing the closing hymn, and I'm still going to hope for the closing hymn. You all know it. 235. You all know this? Do we want to get the choir up here? No? Okay. Then stay where you are. You recalcitrant choir. Deck the halls, 3 verses. Stand if you want, sit if you want, whichever. Got it, here we go.
Is the season to be jolly? La 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 la. Come we now our gay carol. La 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 la. Throw the ancient words on carol. La 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 la. See the blazing word before us. Strike the harp and join the chorus. Follow me in merry measure. While I tell of youth Sing, rejoice all together. Heedless of the wind and weather.
Okay, please be seated. These are the closing words. Before the closing words, we will hope to hear Bruce again for the postlude, and we will definitely have cookies afterward. But first, you must hear these things. The closing words are by Max Coots in the back of the hymnal. When love is felt or fear is known, when holidays and holy days and such times come, when anniversaries arrive by calendar or consciousness, when seasons come as seasons do, old and known, but somehow new, when lives are born or people die, when something sacred sensed in soil or sky, mark the time. Respond with thought or prayer or smile or grief. Let nothing living slip between the fingers of the mind, for all of these are holy things we will not, cannot find again. Max Coots. Thank you, Bruce. And now let there be cookies or refreshment.